It's Eugene Driscoll, Tony Spinelli,
and Jody Mosher.
And we're at the Valley Independent Sentinel, and it's Navel Gazing, our weekly podcast. And this week we're going to talk about it's caucus week, political drama. Can't get enough of it.
That's
nice
a
drum roll. And first, I wanted to talk about. I started to send out our weekly email this morning, but I had problems with the program, and then I set my computer on fire. But the Oxford Republicans, if they are not the most committed group of local political people in the Valley, I don't know who is. They stayed until 1 a.m.
Yeah.
Right.
To see who is. That's pretty. I mean, we were kind of having fun on Facebook, but just a credit to local people who were involved, who were that involved. What was it like, Tony? And what the heck was? Why did it take so long?
They were counting them by hand, and it was complicated by the.
And you kept going 6, 5. They kept having to start over.
Yeah.
And George Temple, who was the odd man out, and was running for the first selectman's office, along with David Yish, who was who had been given a nod. He wanted to have one of his own people overseeing the process. So the process was done by hand, and it was being overseen at the same time to make sure everything was done correctly. And it took about 3.5 hours to count up the ballots.
And was it just was the delay like the way they were, you could say vote for David Yish on one ballot and then vote for one of Temple's guys on the other? Is that why it was?
Yeah, well, each voter handed in a slip showing that they were eligible and verified, and they were given one ballot. And on that ballot, there were several names. Yish's name.
But I'm
Temple's
trying to get to,
name.
like, when they counted them. Was that
and
why
when they
it was...
counted them, they had a tally sheet. And they put a hash mark next to each candidate's name. And then at the end of the night, they totaled up all the hash marks. And they double-checked everything to make sure it was correct. And it took about 3.5 hours. Easily.
Wow. And then how many people were there at the very end?
Well, at the very end, there were probably 15 people left. The night began with about 215, all crowded into the room at Town Hall.
Now, isn't that 200 people coming to a Republican caucus? I mean, it's not a primary, certainly not the election, it's not the general election. I was impressed that 200 people showed up. After a relatively small town, that's a lot of people. You've been a reporter for a long time. Was that a lot?
Well, in my experience, I've got to be honest and say I haven't really covered a lot of caucuses in my experiences as a reporter. There's only been a couple of them that I've ever covered, really, and this was by far the best attended, the largest. But the thing that made it different was George Temple knew going in that he had at least 100 people that were going to come out for him. He knew that, and that is exactly what happened, and he won.
He had 111, right?
Right. He had 111, and I believe David Yish had 96.
Now, in your article, you had William Neary at the very end saying a primary was likely. Did he say that night?
Yeah, that very night.
Okay.
After all was said and done, I asked him what he thought would happen next, and he predicted that there would be a primary. And I'm hoping to hear today, actually, from David Yish on whether there is going to be a primary.
You put in calls to him yesterday?
Oh, yes. I've been checking with him every day ever since.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. It's an interesting race up there. Then I attended 2 caucuses. I don't know if that's the plural of caucus, but 2 of them. 2 nominating conventions this week. Derby Democrats and the Derby Republicans. And they were sort of they were contrast of one another. First was the Derby Republicans, and they were, Dan Foley, who ran 2 years ago. His speech 2 years ago when he accepted the nod was he didn't go into specifics. As reporters, if you cover a lot of these things, you sort of dread them because a lot of times it's you can predict what people are going to say. People are going to say the candidate is honest and has integrity. I'd love to go to a caucus where somebody just got up there and said, this guy is a liar, but, he's the best we have. But Foley, this time, I was surprised. He went into, he gave specific, here's my platform, here are 4 things. I want to, crime in Derby, we have to address. We have to put up police cameras. He Halo project. which the mayor kind of said last night, Stefari, when he was nominated, it's easier said than done. You can't just snap your fingers and make Halo happen because people live there, and you're talking really about displacing residents of Derby. But anyway, I was surprised that Foley was as specific as he was. And I think maybe that, he's a guy, I didn't know this either, but here's a guy who would get up in the middle of the night to work a postal job and then go to his teaching job at Derby High School. So he seems like a guy who's committed at the least. And he has, the fact that he has Mike McFarland advising him. I talked to Mr. McFarland afterward, and I didn't know him, and he didn't know me. I'm new. But, that's a guy who clearly knows politics, local politics. So I don't know. We'll see. They had a lot of people there. Contrast that with the Republicans last night. And I think, the Republican caucus last night in Derby was probably like the Ansonia caucus for Mayor Della Volpe. It's more of a formality. Mm-hmm. This is the guy. They know they're going to nominate him. He's popular. So, because the Republican turnout was much smaller last night than the Democrats, in Derby. And it was just when I say relaxed, they were cracking jokes. It was more like a little party almost. It was, so it was just, it was different. Not to say that, the Republicans aren't serious, but they were, we'll see. Like they weren't, this wasn't the be-all, end-all, obviously, of the campaign. So I'm really looking forward to the Derby race. I think, 2009, it was sort of a non-campaign for Foley. There wasn't a lot going on. Still, they point out he only lost by 411 votes. So we'll see what happens this time around.
That's fairly close.
Yeah, it didn't at the time. I don't know. I was surprised that it was that close, but we'll see what happens. The other thing we had going on was Chris Jones, round two.
Round two, and what you were saying about Foley is kind of the same about him. He came out with specific points, his platform, what he wants to achieve and how he thinks he'll do it. And I wonder if that's because they're both challenging incumbents. You know what I mean? They have you can't just go there and say, "Hey, I'm so and so, vote for me." Like you have to have something specific because if you're challenging a 3-term mayor or a 10-term mayor, people are re-electing them, so you have to do something better or different, and you have to be clearer about it.
You can't just sit there and talk about how wonderful you are and that you were born in the town. And you also can't just sit there and say the other guy sucks. Right. And here's a million reasons why he sucks.
Because people
the people like him, yeah. So that's a good point. Both Foley and Jones came out with pretty specific platforms. So that's interesting. And Tony, you had, after your 1 a.m., 2 a.m. night,
right?
You had Seymour Selectman.
Right, the Seymour.
Do you even remember going to that? I'm saying Selectman. I haven't had any
Tony's
sleep
like,
this
wait,
week.
what did I have? Was I
go home after this and edit these stories, and then like my little son wakes up and smacks me on the mouth. And it's just my life is hell. That's why I'm on Facebook all the time. I hate Facebook, but I have no life.
Google Plus. So what's that?
Google Plus.
Yes, the Seymour Republicans went very smoothly last night. And remarkably smoothly in comparison with what I had experienced the night before in Oxford with Republicans. They used a completely different voting method, which simplified everything
and just did it,
and just got it done. And that's why I remember the couple that I've covered in the past were done that way. So.
What was
probably
their
because
voting
there was
method,
no internal
raise of hands?
Well, the voting method was: this is our candidate. Does everybody agree? Okay, our secretary is going to cast one ballot for him.
Huh.
Do I have a second? Yeah. And they got it all done without anybody filling out a ballot or any show of hands or any ayes or nays. It was all very simplified.
And we like simple because, we're stupid. And with that, I'm signing off.